Hi, Mike.
Hi, Joe. What have you been up to?
Not too much. I think the only entertainment I had was going to the cinema on the weekend.
Let me guess. Did you watch Barbie or Oppenheimer?
Yes, I watched Barbie. It wasn't too bad. Not what I expected, but still pretty good. Uh, an interesting thing I did notice at the cinemas, though, as I walked in, they had like a board displaying the featured film. And then when I was walking out, I noticed that the film had changed from what it was previously. So I asked one of the staff how does that works, and they said it's driven by ticket sales. So basically, all the cinemas collect the tickets they've sold, and they send it to headquarters. And based on the numbers, they send the featured films back to the cinemas for this display on the boards. So I thought that's a pretty interesting distributed system scenario, and maybe one we could implement quite easily using our particular templates or for endpoints, sagas, and handlers. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon we could probably knock that out in about half an hour. How would you go about building something like that?
So what I thought, so this is my vision. You've got Bob and Jane coming in to buy some tickets to the cinema. They record those ticket sales, and then every now and then send them to headquarters where they get accumulated. And then when the feature film changes based on those ticket sales, they headquarters sends a message back to the cinema and they update the display of their featured film. So normally this would happen periodically, not every time a ticket is sold, but for the purpose of this little demo, we could probably just do it every time a ticket is sold, send an update to headquarters. That would work.
Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's jump
Uh,
into Visual Studio.
Okay, let's do it. So what we need for this is basically two entities, two endpoints, one for the ticket sales and one for headquarters. And we could use the Visual Studio templates to do that. I've installed them already, so let's do that. So I have a template for an endpoint.
Hmm.
I'm going to give it a name. So the first one will be ticket sales. And the template gives us some options, so we can choose our framework, transport, persistence, and a hosting model. And just for the purpose of this demo, we can just use the learning, transport, and persistence, and we use a console application so we can see what's happening.
Cool.
Okay, so what this did for us is it gave us it set up our whole hosting environment, and using this use NServiceBus extension method, it set up NServiceBus for us. You can see some of the settings we chose. So we have use persistence as the learning persistence and the transport as the learning transport. I'll just make this a little bit bigger in case it's hard to see. There you go.
Thank you.
And there's a few other options, but that we don't really need to worry about for this demo. Each one of those kind of has a link to documentation which explains what it does, so you can read up on that if you need to use any of those. So I guess the only other thing to point out is each endpoint has a name and it corresponds to the queue that it will read its messages from. And in our case, this is cinema ticket sales because that's what we named this project.
Hmm.
So to simulate the sales, we have a console application that just takes some user input. They press B for buying a Barbie ticket, press O for Oppenheimer, and then as those tickets are purchased, we just send a message to headquarters. So in order to do that, we'll need some messages, and the messages in NServiceBus is just a simple class. So because we want to share those between the two endpoints, suggest creating them in a shared library.
Hmm.
Just a class library. Call it cinema.tickets, the messages. I use the same framework. Now, so the first message we need is record ticket sale. And so how the cinemas do this is they record tickets. They have the featured film per month. So we want to record ticket sales for the month. So we have one property for that. Let's call it month ID. And we want to record which movie we're actually selling a ticket for. So film name. Okay, and because we use a template to create our endpoint here, it automatically edits reference to NServiceBus for us. But because we just use a normal class library to create the messages, we don't have that. So I'm just going to add that in quickly to there. And we need that because we need to tell NServiceBus that this class is a message. So it needs to inherit from iCommand. And that's all required there. The only other thing we need in terms of the message being sent is we need to tell it where to go. So we have this concept of routing on the endpoint. And the way it works is you say, anything of this message type, of this class type, goes to a certain endpoint. So our messages record ticket sale. And just add a reference to our messages project.
Mm-hmm.
And we want it to go to headquarters. Okay, so we have our messages, we have our ticket sales endpoint. Now we just need a way to actually input them in. So we'll add a little service to this, which will simulate our tickets selling process. This will be a class. I'm gonna call it console sales desk. And to save you watching me type, I'm just going to paste in the code. It's not really relevant to what we're doing too much. It's just basically we're going to tell the user press B for Barbie, press O for Oppenheimer, and then based on what they've pressed, we're going to send a message either of type record ticket sales, either with Barbie in it or with Oppenheimer in it. And for month ID, we're just using a simple string to say what month or year we are. Just maybe one thing to point out is this message session object that has been that we're injecting here, and we use that. It's an NServiceBus object. It's been set up by us in the services by this use NServiceBus method, and we use it to basically send messages and publish messages. So we use it here to the message send. Is that pretty much it, what we need? I believe so.
I think we need to hook up that service that will actually run as part of
Yes,
the
that's correct.
endpoint. And then once we've got that, we should be able to send record some ticket sales.
Yep, so add the service to the services. There we go. And then let's have a look how this works.
One of the things I really love about prototyping with the learning transport is that you can just send messages to endpoints that don't exist. I mean, you can do that with any other transport as long as you create the queues in advance, but the learning transport just kind of does it quietly for you.
That is very handy. So there we go. Sell a B for Barbie, a few Barbie tickets, a few Oppenheimer tickets. So what that has done is in the background has sent those messages, but we don't have an endpoint to receive them. So that's our next thing to conquer. Okay, so we need to add another endpoint for headquarters, which we'll do again using our templates. So we use the template there, call it cinnamon.headquarters. Use the same options as before. And once again, it has created the NServiceBus hookups here. We have our endpoint configuration with the name we were given. We have again our learning transport and learning transport and learning persistence. Okay, so we have that. Now we need to, we're going to be receiving a message, something to handle it somehow. So we need to create a handler, and we also have templates for that. So we go to headquarters, add a new item, use the message handler template, call it record ticket sale handler. And we have this created for us. Once again, we can see the message session is passed in that we can use to send messages, to publish messages within the handler. And all we basically need to do is specify which message type we want to be handling. So in our case, it's record ticket sale, to add a reference to our messages library. And then in this handler, we just put whatever business logic we might want to do. So in our case, at this point, we just want to log that we are receiving, we've received the message.
Just make sure things are wired up correctly.
Received ticket sale for field name. Okay, and now when we run this endpoint, remember we sent those messages before from the ticket sales. They were sent, but they didn't go anywhere. So they basically just went to the queue that we specified, which was Cinema headquarters. And now because this is running as Cinema headquarters, it's the queue that it reads messages from. So when we run this, it should pick up those messages that were sent before.
Fingers crossed.
Drum roll. And there we go, received, received, received. So that has worked. Okay, so
Awesome.
we're almost there. The other thing we wanted to do was, once we get the ticket sales, we wanted to publish our feature field message. So let's do that. Stop that. So then what we're missing is we have a message to record the ticket sales. Now we need to add another message to publish a new feature film. So we just add a new class. Let's call it featured film changed. Make public. And now this, in the case of recording the ticket sales, we know we need to send the message to a specific destination. So it was a command, and we need to set up a routing for it. But because in this case where we wanted to publish this to all the cinemas, so it's not a specific endpoint, we're doing an event, not a message, not a command.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do need is we just basically need the new featured film. Name. And then we want to publish this as well in. So what we want to do is go to our handler, and instead of just logging, we also want to publish the message. So we're going to use the context, the message context here again, and use publish featured film and give it the name of the film. This point, we're just basically every time we get a ticket sales for a certain movie, we're publishing that is the new featured film. So the last part of the puzzle is handling or receiving that message on the ticket sales endpoint. So we're going to need a handler for that. So once again, we can add a new item and use our message handler template. This is featured film changed handler. And we specify which message we're handling. So it's featured film changed message. And we have our space for our business logic. And we're just going to log that we have received the new featured film event. New featured film is
So this is going to get us into a situation where the message flow between the endpoints is right. The business logic isn't quite right. But once we've got those messages flowing the way we want them to, we can focus on just one endpoint and update the logic.
correct. And we want to start both of these projects up. Okay, so press start, both of them running. Okay, so sell the Barbie ticket. We got the handler received ticket for Barbie. And because we had no featured film before, well, sorry, because we're doing a featured film every time we get a new ticket sale, the event was published and we received it on this side. If we just sell the one for Oppenheimer, same thing happens. Okay, so we have the two communicating. I think the ticket sales endpoint's finished. It does what we wanted to do, but the headquarters is not quite, because we don't want to be changing the featured film every time someone buys a ticket for a film. We want to change it based on the number of ticket sales and on the film that has sold the most tickets. So what we can use for that is something called Saga in NServiceBus, which is like a workflow, and also allows us to persist some data. So we can add one of those with a template as well. So choose my NServiceBus Saga template, and we can call it featured film Saga. And here's our generated code. There are a lot of things here that we don't need, so I'm just going to go and remove those so that this is a bit cleaner.
Hey, why did the polar bear go to the cinema?
No idea.
You wanted to get into snow business.
Ah, good one. Okay. Yes. Okay, so I got rid of some things we don't need. No, we just got the basics left. So the first thing, the way the Saga persists data is through this thing called Saga data. And the first thing we need to give it is an ID that identifies the Saga. So in our case, we want a Saga per month, because we're accumulating ticket sales per month. So we use the month ID as the ID. And then the other properties we need is actual keep count of the number of tickets for each movie. So we'll have a very simple ticket counts for Barbie and one for Oppenheimer.
This is really just doing the simplest thing that could possibly work in this situation. And once we get the logic down, in theory, we could come back and make this more generic.
Correct. Now we want to calculate a featured, sorry, so that before we do that. Okay, so we have our Saga data now. We want to specify what messages the Saga can handle. And in our case, it's record ticket sales. And then over here, we also need to map or define how the mapping between messages and the Saga. So the Saga's ID is the month ID, as we just set up. And then for our message coming in, it also has a month ID, so we can match them on that. So any messages, for example, any messages with a month ID of July this year will be processed by a saga that this has the same idea of July this year, and then once the month changes to August, then a new saga will be started, and it would start processing those messages. And here we
Cool.
have the handler for our message, and this is where our business logic goes. So what we want to do is kind of have a way of figuring out what the current feature film is. And the simplest way for that is to say, okay, are the ticket sales, the ticket counts for both movies the same? If they are, then we don't have a featured film. But if one is greater than the other, then either Barbie or Oppenheimer is the featured film. And then as far as our logic for the handler, it's also very simple. Basically, new ticket sales comes in, so we want to record the current featured film because we want to see if it has changed. We don't want to publish a message every time there is a new ticket sale. We only want to do it when the current featured film has changed based on ticket sales. So recording the current feature film at the start, then incrementing the counter for the movie based on which movie the ticket was for, then capturing the current featured film again and saying if the featured film is not empty, so if we have one, and if it's different to what it was before, then publish a featured film changed event, passing in the current featured film. And then we're just doing some logging to display the current count of each movie. So since we
do the job.
Since we have this handler, we don't need our original handler that we created. Was that here? So we can get rid of that. Okay, and now when we run these two, okay, sell the Barbie tickets. We get a new featured film as Barbie because before that we had no featured film, so this is a change. But if we do another Barbie, then ticket count is incremented here, but the featured film is not changed. Do it again, same thing. Now if I sell an Oppenheimer ticket count increments there, but Barbie's still leading. Again, Barbie's leading. Now they're equal, so still no change. But now Oppenheimer's in front, and we got a new featured film as Oppenheimer event. So it looks like it's doing what we wanted it to do. And that wasn't too hard.
No, I think it looks pretty good. We could probably turn that into a sample.
We could maybe also include the video in the sample too. People can see it and code along.
Yeah, seems like a good idea.
Cool. Well, now after all this movie talk, I might go and watch Oppenheimer to even up the ticket scores.
Yeah, actually, I've got tickets to go and see Barbie, so it's a race.
Cool. Let me know what you think. See ya.
All right, bye.